Dennis, I want to congratulate you on the amazing success of your book. You're number 2 bestseller on Amazon. I'm kind of embarrassed to say who's number 1. I'll let you react to it.
Well, this is a very funny story, actually. So to be number 2 of all books Amazon sells is obviously a big deal. And I'm very proud of it, especially given that the subject is God and good and evil, not exactly bestseller type books. So it's number 2. What's number 1? The autobiography of a stripper. And the reason I find that funny is that my commentary on the biblical book of Exodus, the second book of the Bible, was also number 2 some years ago when it came out. And that too is very rare for a biblical commentary. What was number 1? It was a story about a gay rabbit. So I lost out number 1 to a stripper's autobiography and to the story of a gay rabbit. And I just find that poetic.
Well, it's still available on Amazon, and I'm sure more people are going to want to read it. I've been getting great comments. And so, again, congratulations. And it's mind-blowing what you're able to do, even though you're in the hospital. And so I keep saying kudos to you. And from all of us, we're just so grateful that you're still in the fight. Many of us are shocked by what we're seeing in Iran. I didn't think that in my lifetime we would see even the possibility of regime change in Iran. And there's a lot of debate and conflict over whether President Trump should have gotten involved in Iran. And many of us want to hear from you what your perspective is on the recent events on that side of the world.
I remember the case made against the president dropping mountain buster bombs on Iran. And the argument was from Tucker Carlson. I mean, I heard it. I didn't read about it. I heard him make it, that this would lead to World War III. Well, of course, it didn't lead to World War III. What it led to was a weakening of Iran's ability to produce nuclear weapons. This notion that the president doesn't know what he's doing and will lead us into some depths of despair is not warranted by the reality. He has been brilliant in his decisions. I remember I didn't speak about it publicly because I wasn't speaking then publicly. But I remember my own self wondering, did President Trump make the right decision? I was worried about it. I was happy he did, but I was worried about it. And I was wrong in my worries. And he knew what he was doing.
You were worried about the original mission that the United States blew up the nuclear facilities there.
That's right, yes. And I think that the man has earned our respect, whether you like him or not, with regard to decisions made vis-a-vis Iran and other world decisions, like with Maduro in Venezuela, and now this in Iran.
Well, I mean, surely it is true that there are many things that President Trump has done that has worked well. With that said, one of the things that we were told after the U.S. first went into Iran and bombed those nuclear facilities, we were told that we did that in order to avoid them having nuclear weapons. And so many are questioning now, well, if we went in there and we had, in fact, an amazing, successful mission, why do we need to go there again if they no longer exhibit a nuclear threat?
Well, they themselves have announced that they are resuming nuclear weapons production. And I take them at their word. You know, it's so interesting that people are questioning whether Iran is an enemy of the United States. This is a country whose regime began by taking the American embassy as hostages for 400 something days. And this is a regime that has had endless demonstrations of Marg Bar America, death to America. What other country is chants death to America? I mean, why don't we take that seriously? Plus, the number of Americans that Iran is responsible for killing, nearly 1,000 between our soldiers in Lebanon and other instances of IEDs, of the bombs on the sides of the road in Iraq and elsewhere. This is a country that would love to destroy the United States, or at least weaken our abilities in the world. I would give the president the benefit of the doubt.
I'd say one of the major criticisms against President Trump acting now against Iran is that he ran on a platform of not getting involved in the Middle East when he was so critical of the war in Iraq. And so many are asking, well, what has happened to President Trump's promises? What has happened to his original platform of not getting involved in endless wars in the Middle East? If Iraq, according to him, was a huge mistake, why would he now get involved in Iran?
Nobody claims that this will be an endless war. It's theoretically possible, but it is very unlikely. He is no more interested in an endless war than any of his critics. Secondly, with the word endless, we've had endless occupation of Germany and Japan. And look at how good it turned out for Germany and Japan. So the word endless does not strike me as instantaneously weakening or destroying the argument for entering to begin with. Also, the United States, whether we like it or not, is a world power. And if we don't project our power, then China and or Russia will. And that is the ultimate battle, which even the critics of the president acknowledge. Why don't we focus on China? Well, we are focusing on China. China is watching to see how we are acting, to learn how America might react if China invades Taiwan. And believe me, well, you don't have to believe me. Just believe the fact that China is far more convinced that we would respond to an invasion of Taiwan under President Trump than under a President Biden, or for that matter, any Democrat, or for that matter, some Republicans, the people who are allied with Tucker Carlson's views.
Do you think that people who ally with those isolationist views would say the same thing about Taiwan? Like, who cares about Taiwan? It's on the other side of the world. We have major issues with cartels in Mexico. I mean, the cartels are terrorists. They're much closer to the United States. They may pose a much bigger threat. Why are we focusing on countries on the other side of the planet when we have right here at our border with Mexico issues with cartels, and we're not acting on that front?
Well, that implies very directly that it's a zero-sum game, that if we concentrate on one, we can't concentrate on the other. If America cannot deal with the cartels at our border and deal with Iran, then we are a much weaker country than I would have presumed. No matter what, with Taiwan, the same thing. Well, why concentrate on Taiwan? Let China gobble up Taiwan like they did Hong Kong, and let's concentrate on the cartels. The same argument would be offered. And then all that does is say to the world, do whatever you like, just don't get involved with the cartels in Mexico. That's not a good thing for America. It's not a good thing for the world.
Do you think that President Trump has a larger view, a bigger view than these individual countries, but actually is looking at everything on a global scale? I mean, we talk about Venezuela, we have Iran. I'm sure there's going to be conversation about Cuba soon. Last time we chatted about Greenland. Is there a bigger picture that maybe younger people than you can't quite discern and put together, given maybe our lack of experience or knowledge or history of how the world works and how those allegiances are built?
The problem with many of the younger generation is that they have no memory. They, for example, what was it? Some serious percentage of young people didn't know what the Holocaust was. I mean, to have no memory of the greatest evils in human history that occurred 2 generations ago, that's all, is a real problem. And so there's no collective memory. A world that does not have American strength is a much weaker world, is a worse world, is a morally worse world. You know, it's interesting. Years ago, I wrote a column, anyone can find it on the internet, criticizing Tucker Carlson well before Iran and the Israel issue, because he said that anybody who defended America's dropping of the atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki was evil. That was his description, whether at the time or in our time. Just for the record, and this too is easily found, PragerU had a video defending the morally defending and strategically defending the dropping of the atom bombs on Japan, given by a man who is both a historian and a Catholic priest. And we did this, one of our earliest videos, well before the Tucker Carlson issue or any other issue dividing the right. And I wrote a column against him because the moral argument for dropping the atom bombs was so much greater than the moral argument against dropping them. But his view is that if any innocents are killed, whether deliberately or not deliberately, doesn't matter. It's immoral and evil. That means you cannot wage any war.
As you talk about the moral element of what happened in Hiroshima, I think about the moral questioning of what is happening in Iran. For example, Dennis, there was a school in Iran that was bombed. Now, we don't really know where the bomb came from. Was it from the outside? Was it from the Americans? Was it from the Iranians? What's your comment when innocent children are dying now in Iran, now because possibly an American bomb may have fallen on that school?
Well, first of all, let's be clear that there is no war in which innocents do not die. That is the tragedy of war. And with relation to this issue of the responsibility for the war, remember, if Iran had simply said, we will no longer pursue nuclear weapons, none of this would have occurred. And the president was 100% correct in stating that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. What would have happened, had that happened, is Saudi Arabia and the other, many of the other Arab states in the region would have pursued a nuclear weapon. We would have had nuclear proliferation on an incomparably dangerous level. So the choice is not between purity and immorality. It's between inevitable danger and the tragedy of innocents being killed. Who is responsible ultimately for innocents being killed, whether in Gaza, where it's Hamas, not Israel, or it's in Iran, where it is Iran rather than America?
You know, Dennis, we were hearing the same claims that we have to go into Iraq. We have to stop the Iraqis because they were chanting death to America. We were hearing many of the same claims that we have no choice but to get involved in the Middle East. And then years later, we found ourselves entangled in an Iraq war, in an Afghanistan war, in regime change, in trying to get involved in bringing democracy to the other side of the planet. And so many people are very worried that this sounds very similar. Why did we get into Iraq? Why did we get into Afghanistan? And now people are asking, why are we getting into Iran? Are we going to end up with the same entanglement of years and years and billions of dollars spent, not to mention the number of American deaths that should be avoided?
There is no guarantee in life, period. Well, what is it other than death and taxes?
Taxes.
There are no guarantees in life. And I can't give, the president can't give a guarantee, but the odds are overwhelmingly unlikely that we would be involved in an endless war there. That is analogous to what happened in Iraq, would happen in Iran. Also, nearly 40,000 people were slaughtered, were shot, machine gunned to death by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, by the regime in Iran against its own people. This was not analogous to what happened in Iraq. The people of Iran do not want this repressive totalitarian regime, which has shut off all communications with the world. There is no internet in Iran at this time, just as an example.
Is there an expectation that we just trust President Trump that he's going to do things differently, or we assume that he has a different philosophy because what we saw he was able to do in Venezuela, where he works quickly and our military has a different tactic where the strategy is to go from the air rather than immediate boots on the ground and reinstitution of some sort of new regime that is orchestrated by the West? Do you think that part of Trump's philosophy is what's going to possibly lead to a better result this time around? How do you know? Is it just a hunch?
Yeah, no. I do believe it's his philosophy. And I do believe something that is not a matter of belief, it's a matter of knowledge. The precision of aerial bombardment today is far greater than it was at the time of Iraq, far greater, where you have pinpoint accuracy from the air, meaning you don't need boots on the ground when you can do it from the air.
Yeah, and it's especially interesting to see that they had a couple of test cases before they went into Iran most recently. In Venezuela, there was a test case of going in and then, immediately leaving. And then obviously the big test case of the United States getting involved in bombing the nuclear facilities a few months ago. Dennis, I'd love to spend a couple of moments going into a little bit of history with you, given that you lived during the time where Bill Buckley and Buchanan were arguing over isolationism. And I'm wondering whether the tension on the right, the tension amongst conservatives, feels similar to you. Is it similar to what you saw with Buckley and Buchanan and everything that went down later on with Ronald Reagan and the Berlin Wall? Does any of this sound like history is rhyming?
Yes and no. There was a division, but we don't have a Bill Buckley today. We don't have a William Buckley, meaning we don't have a seminal voice on conservatism that is virtually universally respected, which is a tragedy. We should have. We do, in fact, have, but they don't play that role. Douglas Murray, for example, has been shot down by the left. He could be a William Buckley of our time. And there are others as well. But the left has allied itself with the Islamists and has rendered these people right-wingers or neoconservatives or whatever they want to call them and been dismissed. So that's, we don't have, in other words, we don't have a William Buckley today. And Pat Buchanan never had the following that a Tucker Carlson or a Candace Owens has today in the millions. In any event, there was no internet at that time which could have even measured it. So there's no parallel.
What do you think Eastern Europe would have looked like if we had the environment that we have today on the internet? Do you think the Berlin Wall would have fallen? Would we have gotten involved in Europe, or would we have isolated ourselves from helping our allies or getting involved on the world field?
The very fact that you're asking a legitimate question is the answer to your question. We don't know. But the fact that we don't know is in itself an indictment of the times in which we live. Because we don't know what people would have said when President Reagan said, "Tear that wall down, Mr. Gorbachev." They might have said, he's getting involved in an entangling alliance. Thomas Jefferson declared war on the Barbary pirates. And by the way, in the very Revolutionary War we fought against Britain, we had an entangling alliance with France. Without France, I'm not sure we could have won the Revolutionary War. So we were entangled then. That's not what Jefferson meant, that we simply retreat from the world. It's that we don't involve ourselves in gratuitous entangling alliances.
I wonder whether the people who are criticizing Donald Trump would be the same type of people who would have criticized Ronald Reagan. But hey, I'm just asking questions. Dennis, I want to talk about what if something incredibly positive happens, because I think that many of the questions that I asked you were about what if things go wrong? What if the Iran war ends up like the Iraq war or the Afghanistan war? What if President Trump's instinct is not correct? What if what if the war ends up in something that we don't like? Okay, but what if it ends up with something incredible? What is the upside of getting involved? I think it's worth talking about the positive element of if Iran is in fact free, if the Persians are able to live freely and have what used to be the Paris of the Middle East yet again, what would that look like, not just for the Middle East, but for the world, even for the United States?
It would mean the elimination of what is universally regarded, namely Iran, as the greatest sponsor of terrorism on planet Earth. That's a fairly significant good. That part of the world would not seek nuclear weapons.
Well, we pray that that will in fact be so. And may the world be a better place yet again, thanks to the United States of America and its ability to put its hand on the world.
That's right.
Thank you, Dennis. See you next time.
Thank you.